We live in a connected world. We have complex systems that make our lives easier, electricity grids and transportation networks that span continents, and we can communicate with anyone on the planet in a fraction of a second. Our lives are so effortlessly connected. All of this modern infrastructure improves our way of life. But you know who else benefits? State-sponsored hackers with the motivation and resources to cause chaos and devastation. All of our critical infrastructure relies on software to run, and as with any software, it may have vulnerabilities or weak access controls that could be exploited by an attacker. Infrastructure including power stations, train lines, gas pipelines, and air traffic control systems are all at risk. Many of these systems were developed over the last few decades without security as a major concern. The capability to attack these is beyond the reach of most hackers, but there's a growing number of state-sponsored organisations and potentially even terrorists with the resources and skills to cripple our networks with acts of cyber war. These groups are sometimes referred to as advanced persistent threats because their technical capability, patience, and motivation far exceeds that of the traditional hackers and cybercriminals around. Imagine the effects of a big city targeted by a well-orchestrated cyber attack. What if power and water was cut to Melbourne for a week in the middle of summer? Casualties from dehydration and heat stroke alone could be in the thousands. Communications would be disrupted, further hindering the emergency response. Food production would cease. Businesses could not function. This would put the city in chaos and have huge economic effects on the nation. An attack like this may be imminent. We should be scared. In mid-2010, a European IT security agency discovered a piece of malicious software or malware on Windows machines from a client in Iran. This malware would later be known as Stuxnet. Stuxnet had two major components. The first, a worm, while often harmless in its own right, is the part that spreads the software onto as many systems as possible. The second is the payload, which causes damage to the target system. Close investigation of Stuxnet revealed it exploited 4 zero-day vulnerabilities in Microsoft Windows. A zero-day is a vulnerability that at the time of exploitation is unknown to the vendor. In other words, they've had 0 days to patch and fix the hole. These holes allowed Stuxnet to spread uninhibited on even fully updated systems. Each of these vulnerabilities is potentially worth up to $100,000 if sold, so it's rare to see one, let alone 4 of these, in a single piece of malware. By the time it was found, Stuxnet had spread rapidly, almost unnoticed, from computer to computer and onto USB flash drives. It breached air-gapped networks, computer networks physically separated from the internet, networks controlling our critical infrastructure all around the world. Despite infecting millions of machines, its payload lay dormant. Stuxnet was looking for computers connected to Siemens PLCs, devices used for industrial control. PLCs controlling a particular model of industrial centrifuge. The exact make, model, and configuration used in a nuclear enrichment facility in Iran. Only when these were found would the payload be activated. This payload would randomly cause the centrifuges, a major component in the nuclear enrichment process, to spin too fast and explode. At the same time, it would send recorded signals back to the operators that everything's running normally. They would be paranoid, not knowing why their hardware keeps failing. While attribution is difficult, it's likely that Stuxnet was jointly developed by US and Israeli intelligence agencies with the aim to sabotage Iran's nuclear program. Both governments officially deny involvement. Stuxnet was the first of a new breed of malware, a weapon as world-changing as the atomic bomb. Its discovery brought chills to everyone operating critical infrastructure. If the good guys are doing it, there's no doubt the bad guys are too. How is an attack like Stuxnet pulled off? With a lot of time, money, and expertise. The only kind of organizations with these kind of resources are nation states with dedicated cyber offensive operations. Their malware is engineered to the highest quality, not slapped together like your average cyber criminal stealing credit cards. Stuxnet was likely a multi-million-dollar project with over a year of development time by expert software engineers. The attackers knew everything about their target, from the version of Windows used to detailed specifications of every device. This kind of information is not readily available. It was likely gained through a combination of cyber recon missions and spies infiltrating the facilities. This was essential in the development, testing, and success of Stuxnet. Although not easy, Stuxnet proved that attacks on industrial systems are a very real concern. So every power grid, train line, and airport in every city in the developed world are potential targets. So who's doing this and why? Most political powers around the world have cyber teams, and their focus is more often on offensive capabilities. Their cyber warfare efforts are being used for political and economic gain. However, unlike with traditional warfare, where it's quite obvious who's attacking whom and with what weapons, cyber warfare is carried out in secret. And there's no openness about these capabilities because revealing them limits their effectiveness. Techniques purposefully hide the perpetrators. For example, if an airport was the victim of a cyber attack, it's unlikely they would even know who the attackers are. It's not like there'd be troops in foreign uniforms storming the terminals. When actions can't be proven, there can be no accountability and nothing to stop mass civilian casualties. There are no Geneva Conventions or code of conduct covering this. There are no rules in cyber war. Thank you.